Hey, founders. Have you ever been ignored, ghosted, or told, "We'll reach out if we're interested" at the end of your pitch? I'm glad you joined us for this episode, part three of Perfecting Your Pitch, where we explain how to close out your pitch without getting a closed door. Okay, so you've covered all the nuts and bolts of the conversation. You don't want this pitch to end with a "thank you very much for your time." Eric, how do you make sure that you have hooked the attention of these VCs and that the conversation can continue after you close the Zoom window?
Great. So, one of the big mistakes that founders make is they leave it open for the VC to make the next move. The time runs out, and then the VC was like, okay, that was great. We'll be in touch. Sign off. And the founder will never hear ever again from that VC. That it's a very common thing is this ghosting etiquette, which is terrible etiquette.
Congratulations, you've been ghosted.
You put it perfectly. So, the right way to end this call is actually to take ownership over the next steps. I think there's two parts to this. One is clarifying with the VC and asking, what is your process for making decisions and on what timeline? So you need to be very clear about that. And two is taking the next step on reaching out. You will say, look, right after this meeting, I'm going to send you all of our pitch materials and relevant data. I'll give you a few days to process this, but expect for me to reach out to you in 2 days to get your thoughts. Uncapped Notes is a series produced by Hustle Fund designed for first-time founders.
Follow us on socials and don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe.
2 days follows up. You send your message. If they don't respond after a few days, you send them another message. There have been times where I've reached out to people 14 times before they were able to commit to us. And they ghosted me for the first 13 times. So don't feel too sad or discouraged if it takes a little while for the VC to follow up. But owning the process is very important here.
I think I've even heard you say that you've opened up your calendar when you're ending a meeting and saying, "When would you like to schedule our next discussion?"
Yeah, that's a really good method too. So if you want to do that and screen share that, that's great. Sometimes you can do a little bit of interesting gamesmanship here too. If they see that your calendar is full of great VC investors coming up in the next week, then if it's on them to just read that. And by the way, don't manipulate it where you're actually lying because that can actually come to really bite you in the butt. But I've done that before. Looking at the calendar together. Let's schedule the next meeting right now. That's not a bad way of doing it either. Janelle, I think I want to leave with just like one last note too, in terms of advice. So for me, when I round out a really good pitch, the feeling that I get was that I was able to get to some level of personality fit with the funder that I spoke to. And the way that you can establish that is leading with a little bit of vulnerability. I like to begin a pitch by talking about my own personal journey on why I started the company. And then I come back to that throughout the pitch of like why this is so personal to me. And what you find is that when you interweave your own personal journey and also solicit moments here and there based on what you've heard from Janelle saying, like, you mentioned that, you grew up in Boston. I have a little funny story about that. Do you know this place or, where this happened and so forth? Trying to sort of just intersperse that throughout this meeting is really good because it feels a little bit less professional, suited up, talking to each other, and more about trying to see whether we can vibe with each other more. I think that's really important to also test because if you're going to be taking an investor at the early stages, Janelle, that's a relationship that can last 7 to 10 years for this given business, maybe even decades beyond that. So it's not just enough to have great professional fit, but you also test for personal fit on both sides.
So, Eric, founders should think of this as the beginning of a long relationship, one that they want to start with really good rapport. And speaking of good relationships, we'd love to have a great relationship with you. So please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to Uncapped Notes.